First time I met Larry, I was 15 years old. He had gone to a performance up at Kingsbury Hall, his little music group, the Marmalade Mode. And they had been asked to open up the road shows. And so they thought they'd hit the big time. And after their performance one day, this big old guy, he comes up to Larry and says, "You guys are fantastic. You're gonna make the big time, and you've got to meet Mr. Music of Salt Lake City. I'm going to introduce you." And so Mr. Music was my dad. He says, "You got to meet Ralph Ridding." And they came over to our house. And I believe I was the one that answered the door. I remember they had these mustard-colored shirts on. It was kind of hippie time, and there's turtlenecks, and they had these chains. Of course, I was a little bit starstruck, you know. It's kind of two cute guys and these really pretty girls, and they were, I didn't know who they were. I thought they were maybe some really famous group or something. And he would hate for me to say this, but I'm going to say it. So every time I saw him, most every time, he had a really pretty girl with him, and it would always be a different girl every time. And I thought, wow, this guy he's a player. No, not a player. I have to explain this. His goal after his mission, he had this little black book. You've heard of the famous little black books. You don't go out with any one girl more than once. His goal was 100 different girls before he got married. So he had to keep track of them, right? Do you want to know what number I was? 67. I saw Larry again after his mission at BYU, and it was the start of the second semester, so I think it was the beginning of February. And I was on a date, and we were over at the old Wilkinson Center, the Cougar Eat. We called it the Cougar Eat. And I looked over in the other booth, and there was Larry sitting there all by himself. I remember he had this gray coat on. I remember exactly what he looked like, and he was eating a hamburger. And I just yelled over there, "Larry Barkdull, is that you?" And he looks over me, "Buffie Ridding, oh my gosh." So he stands up and he comes over and he gives me this big, big hug. Just hugged for a minute, and "How are you doing?" And that was it. But later that night, he called me, and he must have got my phone number. And he called me, and we probably talked for 2 or 3 hours. His personality had changed so much that I hardly even recognized him as the same person. Things moved really fast after that night. I mean, we talked, and it was more like a friend, but I mean, I could tell he was interested. He was sitting in the parking lot there outside of my dorm, but I wasn't really listening, you know, because I was thinking of my homework and how far behind I was. And then that's kind of when I had this amazing experience just come over me. It was just like this light, that's all I can describe it. It's just this pure light it was an energy, just started flowing through me. You know, and I looked at him, and it was just like, I don't know, I can't even describe it. It was like I was looking at him, but I was looking through him, but it wasn't really him. But all of this time, I was just having this huge spiritual outpouring. And I just knew that this was a really good person. After we got married, one day decided to go on a whim and come look for a house down here. And we hired a real estate agent. This was the first home they showed us. I loved this home. It was unusual, it's a different layout, but I loved it. And I told Larry when we moved here, I said, "I don't want to move. I wanted stability for my family," and I said, I want to make this home work. Had wonderful neighbors and quiet street with the orchard. They hadn't had homes there yet, and my kids could go out and play and have children their age, and it was just like moving to a little piece of heaven for me.
One day, I was a chalking and a hugging.
Chucking and a hugging.
Chalking and a hugging away.
Chucking and a hugging away.
Here we go. When along came a man with a chalk in his hand, coming round the other way. Oh yeah.
Larry was quite the unique father and husband. He was a helpmate in every way, especially with the kids. Always, every couple of years, having a new baby, and our babies would cry and be hard for a few months, and he'd always step in. He kind of took over bedtime, teeth brushing. People can remember being pinned down, making sure they had their teeth brushed. And he'd bathe them. He would do all those things, and he'd stand everybody up in the tub and put them down with soap and get their hair, and everybody be screaming, and just kind of as an assembly line. Okay, next one's da-da-da-da-da, you know, in and out, in and out. Had to get pretty creative, and I remember a lot of times when Larry would take all the kids to the park so I could lay down and rest for a while. He worked here most of the time, but after, 5 or 6 o'clock, he'd quit. We'd have dinner, and he would just kind of take over. Larry'd play silly games. He would make kids sandwiches. He'd pile the kids on top of each other. And that would bring a lot of laughs and giggles and fun times. Or getting the kids in their pajamas and go marching around the block. Call it their jammy walks. I think it was a way to get everybody's energy out at the end of the day when people would start racing around the house. I enjoyed fixing up my home, painting, wallpapering, making curtains, decorating, just making my home somewhere where I love to be. And as we could afford it, I would put more and more things in the landscape, flowers and shrubs, but in the beginning it was pretty bare. When Rebecca was born, we made gingerbread houses. It was my first attempt, and every child had one. Well, just picture 7. Rebecca wasn't a part of it, but she was on my hip. She was a part of it. She just didn't have a gingerbread house. But these 6 little children, me trying to help them do a gingerbread house. And I remember that year thinking, I'm never going to do this again. This is insanity. But they were so happy at the end. And so for 33 years, I have made gingerbread houses. Now, I don't do it with every child anymore, every grandchild. That would be too many, but we make one per family. We just loved this home. Little by little, we made it our own. I was so happy, but we had our challenges right about the time Lindsay was born. Larry lost his job. The company that we came down here for, that Larry was hoping to buy, was sold to somebody else. And so he had to come up with a new source of income. It was really scary. It was hard. There were hard times keeping this house. But little by little, we subdivided here and subdivided there, and we just were forever in debt. We just thought as long as we had kids at home, because we had medical bills and everything, but just always made sure that everybody had what they needed. I baked bread and washed cloth diapers and cut hair and put up fruit, and I tried to do my part to save money. But one thing that got Larry and I through a lot of the hard stuff is every day, and sometimes it would be in the evening if it would be too hot during the summer, but we'd get out and we'd walk around the block. We would hold hands and we would just walk. It got us away. It got us moving, it got us looking around at the beautiful world, and it got us talking. We could have our conversations. We talked about some of our deepest fears, our deepest joys, our deepest hopes. How grateful I am that I took a leap of faith for him all those years ago, back in 1972, and went for it, even though I didn't know everything. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew enough. Because from that leap of faith, developed a love over the years that has become an unbreakable weld. It's a pursuit of a lifetime, but that's what your dad and I wished for each one of you, each one of our children and grandchildren, that you would find someone in your life. Maybe it would take a leap of faith, that you could pursue a life together and end up with the kind of a relationship that Larry and I have. So as I think about my life, especially the last few years, life has a way of changing, and sometimes in ways that we can hardly imagine. And so it's been about 2.5 years since Larry passed away unexpectedly, which shook my world because I didn't see that coming at all. With that shock and with that heartache and with trying to forge ahead, right, kind of this new chapter in my life, it's been a process. I wanted to stand up and be the head of my family. And what I sensed came to me after that was a strength that I never had before. I absolutely know people that leave this life are so very close. I have felt Larry every day, at some point, every day. They're not far away. And it also makes me realize how strong my beliefs are in a loving Heavenly Father. And yes, He does allow hard things to happen, but not because He doesn't love us, but because He wants us to grow. And He wants us to become something more than we are if we just float along with everything going our way. So I do know that we have a loving Father in heaven that hears and answers our prayers in His own way and in His own time, and that we have a Savior who can rescue us from every bad decision, every unfair situation, every sickness, every heartache, every wrong thing we've ever done. He's there waiting, and He can make it all better. Maybe not in our timetable, but things are going to be okay. I want my children, each one of them, to know that each one of them was planned and was prayed for and was welcomed. Dad and I both felt so strongly. We would get urgings and promptings and feelings when we could feel that someone would like to come. And I don't know, as I look around at this house, I think it's a symbol. It's changed over the years, but it's a standing symbol of something that represents our family. It's wonderful memories I can't ever picture being anywhere else. And now the grandkids are growing up and coming and going, and I'm so blessed. I have great faith in all of my children and in my grandchildren that you'll receive the light you need to solve your problems and to make of your life something special. And that usually means climbing a few mountains, taking a few detours, but just don't give up, because you're loved and you're here for a reason. And Larry is very, very near. Someday we'll find out how near. But I would just want you to not ever give up hope. This is what I hope for, and this is what I know. I truly believe with all my heart that yes, we're here on this earth for a short time, and we're in this family. We have these relationships, we have these memories, we have this love. But one by one, we're all going to leave this life. And then what? My hope and what I believe with all my heart is that this family will be united and we'll always be together. We'll always be together. What a wonderful thought that is. And so it helps us get through the hard things that maybe if we have momentary times where we don't get along or we struggle with this or with that, but it's just That's just temporary stuff as we figure out our lives. But there will come a day when we will all be together again and never to be separated. And that's my hope. And that's what I believe with all my heart. And that's what I want you to discover in your lives for yourselves and the path that it takes to get there. I love you all. I am so honored to be your mother. I don't know what I did to ever deserve such a wonderful family.